Welcome to Deep South again. We thought we'd take an opportunity this morning to show you a little bit about something that we've just come across. We do gluten intolerance. You know, I'm a gluten intolerant person, and we do a lot of gluten-free breads and stuff like that when we're cooking. We've had this antique mill here, hand mill, that we use to grind our chicken feed with for years, and it just really dawned on us here few days ago that we could use this to make our own rice flour with, because the rice flour is so expensive to purchase. And so today we're going to give this thing a trial run to see how it works. This is a 101 Black Hawk grain mill. It's an antique. I've had it for many years. I bought it in an auction. Like I said, we've used it quite frequently to grind our chicken feed with. Corn from our fields. We crack our corn and stuff for the chickens with it. But today, we're going to be doing this demonstration. We've ground a little bit here, and it's kind of to the consistency, the first run of grits. Like when we grind our grits and stuff with it, it feels like that consistency this morning. So we're just going to do a test, and we're going to see, will it grind it down to the point where we can actually use it for rice flour. Alright, we're back. We've spent probably 5 minutes grinding through the first grinding of this here to get it to the grit stage consistency. What I'm going to be doing now is we're going to be rerunning this, and I'm going to show you a little bit about the adjustments on the back of this antique mill here. These are quite simple to operate. You have these two screws here, wing nut things that you turn in, and you just adjust them in, and when you turn them in, that tightens up the burrs on the inside of this to make a more consistent flour. So that's going to be our next phase here. Once you run them in, you want to tighten the wing nuts. Not tight, just kind of snug them a little bit. You're going to want to run this in. Now we're going to pour this back into the cups here. Some of it may fall into the hopper, which will be perfectly fine. Just go ahead and pour it in here first. Go ahead and get the hopper full. This is all just an experiment today to see if we're going to be able to actually make bread with this. I can tell you from experience, once you get through doing this, you won't need no gym workout, because this right here is a good workout for you. And this morning we're in the high 20s to maybe around 32 degrees out here. Everything's still froze. That's why we're dressed up the way we are in the shop. But this right here will sure help warm you up. So when we get this run, we'll take you to the next part of the video a little bit later and show you the next process. Okay, we're back in the house now after we've ground all of our rice flour. We tried using a store-bought colander, but the screen in the bottom of it, the holes are too big for the flour to be of the fine enough consistency. So what we did, we had a strainer here that we had purchased from Pampered Chef. We take the rice flour out of the bowl that we have ground, and we put it in here. And we take our hand and just kind of bump it to the side. A lot like when you're cooking, you're doing confectionate sugar that way to make sure that there's no lumps in it or anything when you're putting it on your food. And this way, the finer rice flour will fall through the bottom of the screen, and the coarser rice flour is left up here. The part that didn't grind is fine. Then we can take and we just dump that out. Just to kind of give you an idea about what we're doing here. The next phase, we're going to be making our actual bread, and we've already have 3 cups here, which is what it's going to take for this particular recipe. We already have these 3 cups ground and sifted, so we'll get back with you whenever we start mixing all the ingredients together to actually make the bread. Alright, we're back at this point of making the gluten-free bread. I want y'all to understand, this is my first attempt at this. My wife usually does this, but because she doesn't talk very loud, and this machine makes a little bit of noise, she's asked me to actually do the speaking so that maybe you can hear what's being said over the machine while it's running. The first thing we want to do in this gluten-free bread is to add our 3 cups of rice flour. And this is the rice flour that we ground a while ago. We're going to go ahead and add it. In this recipe, you're always going to want to go ahead and add all your dry ingredients first. And because this is rice flour and has no gluten in it, we're going to be using a xanthan gum here. It's made by Hodgson Mill. We use that as a binding agent in it because of the lack of gluten in it. And we have the xanthan gum as a 1 1/4 teaspoons already measured out here. We're going to go ahead and add that in there and get it in. We're going to need 3 tablespoons of sugar in this recipe.
It's already measured.
Okay, we got our 3 tablespoons of sugar. And we're going to want to add the rapid rise yeast. We just use a whole pack in it, is what we usually do. It's 2 1/4 teaspoons, what it calls for. You want to go ahead and mix all this in here. And one of the key things you want to make sure whenever you're making your bread is to make sure that everything is at room temperature. You don't want anything cold. Now,
1 1/4 teaspoons.
1 1/4 teaspoons of the baking powder, and we use the Rumford because it's aluminum free. We try to keep all the aluminum out of our diet if we can. Alright, now that we have all of these
Salt.
things here sitting out of the way, we're also going to add 1 1/4 teaspoons of salt into this. We use the sea salt simply because we just feel like it's a better salt to use. Okay, that should take care of all of our dry ingredients. And what we want to do is we want to drop the mixer down and run it for just a second on low. To make sure all these ingredients are mixed together pretty good before we actually start mixing in the wet ingredients. What we want to do at this point is we want to mix in our warm milk, and because we're gluten free, this is almond milk that we use in this recipe, which calls for 1 cup of it. You want to make sure it's not cold, but it is in a little bit of a warm mixture. You want to add it in gradually. We have 4 tablespoons of soft butter. We want to add that in. You have to understand, this is not going to be like regular bread flour. Now we're going to want to add our eggs, 1 at a time. Sometimes, again, this is experimental. We're learning. This is just a learning process. We may have to add a little bit more liquid to it because of the simple fact that this is home ground rice flour. What you're looking for is you want this to take on the consistency of buttercream. You don't want to add much at a time. We're letting it beat now to the consistency of buttercream like I was mentioning before. It's going to take quite a few minutes to do this, so don't let that bother you. Sometimes you may have to help with our mixer. We have to help kind of turn the bowl, and we have to rake the sides down. All right, I think we're there. This is kind of the consistency that you're looking for, like a buttercream consistency. It's a little bit different than the regular gluten bread. And when we get ready to get it to the next point, we'll get back with you. Because you don't have to knead this or anything like that. You just leave it like it is and let it set and cover it. Okay, we're back. The bread, the dough, not the bread, the dough has been rising now for approximately 2 hours. And you'll notice the consistency of it. It doesn't rise as much as the gluten bread does. But don't let that bother you because it doesn't matter. What we're going to do now is we're going to take this, we're going to put it into this pan. We like the thicker, heavier pans because they seem to do better. You want to make sure your pan's oiled down good. This one's already been pre-oiled. We're going to take this, we're going to rake around and just dump it into it. You notice it looks a little bit different than regular bread dough. It's a lot stickier. Once we have it in here, we want to move it around a little bit. Kind of form it to fit the pan a little bit. And then we're going to let it set and rise for another hour or so. And then we'll put it in the oven and bake it, and hopefully at that point we'll be able to show you what the bread looks like. Okay, our bread has been rising for an hour now. We're going to open it up and look at it. It's rose up to the top of the pan. We have preheated the oven 350 degrees, and we're going to put it in there to bake. And after a while, we're going to show you what it looks like to have a loaf of gluten-free bread. Okay, we're back. We've taken the cooked loaf of bread out of the oven now. We've been letting it sit out and cool for a few minutes, hoping that it'll dump out of the pan okay. We're going to look at it here and kind of see what we have. Want to be easy, not to tear it up if it's... Oh yeah. Turn it over. Got it up on a rack so the air can get up underneath the bottom of it. Let it cool that way too. We have two loaves here. This is loaf actually made from a store-bought gluten-free bread mix recipe here. Now what I wanted to do was to take the home ground rice flour. I wanted to compare them, and that's what it's all about. The bread's a little bit hot right now, but I'm going to go ahead and, I usually don't do this, but I'm going to go ahead and try to see if it'll cut and what kind of texture we're going to have on the inside. I don't want to cut too deep into it. I want to slice a little thin slice off of it here to see how thin I can actually slice it, to see how good of a bread that it's going to be. Look at this. Beautiful bread, cut paper thin, still smoking, if you can see that on the video. Awesome. Just awesome. I want to cut a slice of the store-bought bread mix off. I'll cut it thin also. What we want to do is lay them side by side and look at them. This one actually cooked up just as airy, you see the holes in it, just as airy as that one was. So I'm thinking that the home ground rice flour from plain white rice will make bread just as good as the store-bought variety. I just wish you could taste it, that's all. I wish you would like, subscribe, and share this if you've enjoyed the video. Thank you from Deep South Homestead.